Out and joining me live on LBC News is Maurice Mcleod, who's the Chief Executive of Race on the Agenda. Good afternoon to you, Maurice.
Good afternoon.
First of all, looking at this, I note from the information I've got in front of me, people from black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds were stopped at a rate of 4.1 times higher than those who were white. Why do you think that is?
It's really concerning, isn't it? Basically, the disproportionate stopping of black and Asian young people has been a problem for a long time, and what these figures sadly show is that even that as the increase in stop and searches carries on, the increase in the disproportionality carries on as well. So it's just sadly it's a problem built into how these forces are used, I'm afraid.
Well, it's prompted the Liberal Democrat leader, Sir Ed Davey, to reiterate his call for the government to abolish what he calls the suspicionless S60 powers by backing the police stop and search repeal bill. Do you agree with him?
Personally, I do. Yeah, I think that there's real problems with the S60 and how it's used. I mean, the bottom line is that as well as trying to apprehend criminals, which is obviously what these powers are for, the police have a real role in rebuilding community relations. The time when stop and search was used most was 2000. In recent times, was 2010-11, just before the riots that happened. Then we really do need communities and police to get along better, and these powers don't help.
Now, whilst it is obviously a good thing that if an officer finds anybody in possession of an offensive weapon, that's taken off the street, who would argue with that? And the figures show that out of 18,081 S60 stop and searches, some 255 people were found to be carrying a weapon, and the searches led to 698 arrests and 187 of those for offensive weapons. But great, those people that are carrying those weapons off the street. But we're talking about 18,000 searches where people were completely innocent.
Yeah, I mean that's the problem. I mean, nobody would have a problem with the police finding someone that's got an offensive weapon. We all want that. Black people want that. Everybody wants that. It's our communities that are most at risk of this violence. But when, as you say, 18,000 stops to find 255 people with weapons, I think that's almost like just stopping people randomly. You'd find people with that sort of you'd get that sort of efficiency, and all those other stops where someone was innocent, or more likely, most stops are done for the police smelling drugs. That's what most stops are actually for. So saying it's about finding offensive weapons is kind of a red herring. Sometimes they find offensive weapons, but that's not really what they're looking for.
And I noticed when we look at the data, I mean, clearly the greater number of people live in London, and therefore we've seen a lot of stop and searches happening in the capital. We don't have Greater Manchester figures. We know that it's happening a lot in Merseyside and Essex. A lot less of these stop and searches happening in places including Dorset and Derbyshire. I mean, there is a postcode lottery here as to whether or not you could end up encountering an officer under these rules.
There certainly is. I mean, the rules are, one of the reasons I think for the disproportionality in race is that these powers are focused on areas where there are larger black populations. That's one of the issues with it. And it's something else to point out. These figures were up until March. So what we're seeing, or what I'm certainly seeing in my local area, and what the Met, the GLA reported in their last week in their police and consent report, is that there's been an even bigger increase since lockdown in that police, because they are getting called out less, are acting more proactively, and so they're using stop and search powers more than they were before. So these figures don't even show the full story, I'm afraid.
And what do you think would be a better policy or a better way of trying to keep, of course, weapons off the streets? That's obviously something that needs to happen. But what approach would you think would work better?
Well, there's the obvious thing, which I think is maybe politically difficult for many parties to talk about, is really looking at our drug laws. So, like I say, because most of the stops are actually for drugs, if you took that out of the equation and you had police and communities working together to go that's the person over there that's got the knives. That's the person that we're actually afraid of. You'd get much better results because, like I say, it's the communities themselves. They don't want these people in their communities with knives. Nobody wants that. But when it's wrapped up with all sorts of other stops and all these stops where people have actually done nothing at all, it ends up being counterproductive, I fear.
Thank you for joining me live across the UK on LBC News this afternoon. Maurice Mcleod is Chief Executive of Race on the Agenda.